Mysteries of History Revealed. Dinosaurs to Extraterrestrials by Jeremy Auldaney. Copyright 2014, all rights reserved. And we're starting on page 112, where we left off. And this is number 20 in this series. We were talking about the Rift Valley that occurred, the tremendous worldwide earthquake, an orogeny that occurred that ripped open a valley about 352 years after the flood in the time of the Pleistocene, which was when Abraham was there and witnessed the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Now we're talking about another tremendous worldwide earthquake that will occur on that same fault. Another catastrophic event will involve the same African rift, like the San Andreas Fault in California at the end of the tribulation period, when Jesus returns to set his foot on the Mount of Olives and is split in half, producing a huge valley. Zechariah 14:1-8. Quote, "And his feet shall stand in that day upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east, and the Mount of Olives shall cleave in the midst thereof toward the east and toward the west, and there shall be a great valley, and half of the mountain shall remove toward the north, and half toward the south." Sounds just like earthquakes today, where geologists describe the movement on the San Andreas and other faults. "And ye shall flee to the valley of the mountains, for the valley of the mountains shall reach unto Azal. Yea, ye shall flee, like as ye fled before the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah." Author's note, Uzziah lived between 809 and 757 BC. "And the Lord my God shall come, and all the saints with these. And it shall come to pass in that day that the light shall not be clear nor dark, but it shall be one day which shall be known to the Lord, not day nor night. But it shall come to pass that at eventime it shall be light, and it shall be in that day that living water shall go forth from Jerusalem, half of them toward the former sea, and half of them toward the hinder sea. In the summer and in the winter it shall be." End quote. This is what happened in Cajon Pass in California, where in the San Bernardino mountain chains were uplifted by the San Andreas Fault during the Pleistocene orogeny, causing the Cretaceous flood strata to move against the post-flood Pliocene strata for 24 miles. I found a lot of fossils in the Pliocene and Pleistocene up here at Cajon Pass, resulting in volcanic eruptions. It also reversed the flow of the Mojave River back inland to end at Baker underground. This is when all the mountain barriers in coastal California were formed. This involved a worldwide upheaval and probably occurred at the same time as Abraham. Reference, see more at destinationyeisrael.biblesearchers.com. Seismic destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah and created the Great Rift Valley. Some creationists still think most of the fossil deposits after the Cretaceous are all flood deposits, including the Pleistocene. Researching for this book, I have discovered this is incorrect. Bill Hosch is a creation scientist currently on staff as a research geologist, field tour guide, and speaker for the Institute for Creation Research. He's received a bachelor's degree in geology from the University of Colorado and a master's degree from ICR Graduate School. He told me the flood boundary was at the KT boundary, and other creationists who believe the Cenozoic mammals were flood deposits that, quote, "they were not trained in geology," end quote. Also, the majority of creation researchers believe that there could not be a worldwide post-flood cataclysm. One of these claimed in the Institute for Creation Research's Acts and Facts, quote, "the resultant geologic violence would be overwhelmingly catastrophic, like another Noachian flood all over again," end quote. Exactly right. The cataclysmic post-flood Oligocene of South Dakota and the Pleistocene mammals they think are flood deposits are examples of catastrophic events after the flood. I have examined hundreds of fossil sites in geology, and that is exactly what I've seen in the cores, legends, in ice cores, that is, and legends, and fossil seashells. There was a huge worldwide cataclysm, or series of them, after the flood. And during the post-flood period after large mammals had repopulated the earth, and I've been trying to understand it. This post-flood world was tropical, and there were no ice caps at the poles or in the Arctic for a period of time after the flood. Henry Morris stated his belief in a post-flood worldwide cataclysm, which I quoted in the preface. The Perry-Reese Maps. Professor Charles H. Hapgood had his students study ancient maps and resulted in discoveries which he published in his book, Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings, Evidence of Advanced Civilization in the Ice Age, published in 1966. There he presents his discovery that the older the map, the more accurate it was. He discovered that one of the maps copied from a map used by Columbus and others called the Perry-Reese Map, which was a projection over Cairo, which is the landmass center of the Earth. Charles Berlitz, in his book, The Bermuda Triangle in 1974, says, quote, "The Perry-Reese map found in Istanbul in 1929, part of a world map said to have been copied from a Greek original in the Library of Alexandria. Among other features, the Perry-Reese map shows detailed features of Antarctica, evidently drawn several thousand years before Antarctica was supposedly discovered, as well as the true shape of Antarctica without the ice covering," end quote. Perry-Reese map myth mystery. It is claimed that the Perry-Reese map, compiled in 1513 along with the Orontius Phineas map, published in 1531, show Antarctica without ice. This would be an amazing fact if proven, since evolutionists claim Antarctica was becoming covered by ice beginning 45 million years ago during the Eocene through the Oligocene. This period I have established was right after the flood, about the time of Peleg's division and the Tower of Babel, before ice formed at the poles. But many other researchers contradict this. Almost all reliable researchers confirm the Perry-Reese map does not show Antarctica. I studied the Perry-Reese map myself and found that America does not appear to be on the map shown by Eric von Daniken, Charles Berlitz, and others, which are criticized and considered to be pseudoscientists. However, this map is one of the oldest maps correctly showing the South American coast. It also shows the west coast of Africa, very accurate for the time, confirmed by my own observation. It is a projection made approximately over Cairo, which is not shown. It is only a torn piece of the map. Information about it has shown to be inaccurate, which was passed on by Eric von Daniken and Charles Berlitz and other writers who passed on information from Hapgood, which they did not examine. Dr. Charles Hapgood, in his book Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings, Turnstone Books, London, 1979, preface says, quote, "It appears that accurate information has been passed down from people to people. It appears that the charts must have originated with a people unknown, and they were passed on perhaps by the Minoans and the Phoenicians, who were, for 1,000 years and more, the greatest sailors of the ancient world. We have evidence that they were collected and studied in the Great Library of Alexandria, Egypt, and the compilations of them were made by the geographers who worked there. Perry-Reese had probably come into possession of charts once located in the Library of Alexandria, the well-known, most important library in ancient times," end quote. However, Hapgood and Dr. Charles Hapgood is absolutely right about these details, according to my research. So what went wrong? In his book, Hapgood reproduces a letter verifying the genuineness of his discovery by map experts at an Air Force base. Orientis Phineas Forbidden History. Website forbiddenhistory.info. Quote, this is a copy of a letter. 8 Reconnaissance Technical Squadron, SAC, United States Air Force, Westover Air Force Base, Massachusetts, 14th of August, 1961. Dr. Charles H. Hapgood, Keene Teachers College, Keene, New Hampshire. Dear Professor Hapgood, it is not very often that we have an opportunity to evaluate maps of ancient origin. The Perry Reese 1513 and Orientis Phineas 1531 maps sent to us by you presented a delightful challenge, for it was not readily conceivable that they could be so accurate without being forged. With added enthusiasm, we accepted this challenge and have expended many off-duty hours evaluating your manuscript and the above maps. I am sure you will be pleased to know that we have concluded that both of these maps were compiled from accurate, original source maps. These are from accurate maps. This conclusion was also supported by Albert Einstein in a letter to Hapgood. How can this contradiction be? Hapberg's conclusions fit what I have been discovering in ancient history, geology, paleontology, and the Bible. But from the negative information I researched, I decided that from the weight of the information it appears Hapgood was partly wrong. Then I got to thinking. That's always dangerous. What if we are misrepresenting the information, or misinterpreting it, I mean? I did more digging. Hapgood was right that the ancients did know a lot more than evolutionist-based scientists give them credit for. How could the incredible claims made about the Perry Reese maps be wrong? Then I decided to look up Antarctica in Google Maps and found a much distorted map of Antarctica. Then I remembered that someone had mentioned that the Perry Rice map had the Perry Rice map projection was over Cairo, actually over the Great Pyramid, which is the geodesic marker of the center of the landmass of the Earth. Then I found a map showing this projection and found Antarctica, as well as other continents around the edges of the map, were distorted, and it was similar to the Perry Rice map. Only a tiny portion of the Perry Rice map shows Antarctica. As for the Orientis Phineas map, they say it was copied by someone who is not accurate about a fabled land to the south that was tropical. Of course, the paleontology and the Bible prove Antarctica and the whole world was tropical about 4,000 years ago. The proof that Hapgood was right, after all, is in the details. Most researchers are either shallow or prejudiced by evolutionary preconceived notions. I looked at a Google map of the area between the tip of South America and Antarctica, and I discovered, with a projection over Cairo, and I discovered, which is the landmass center of the Earth, and I discovered there is a shallow underwater land connection between them, which would have connected Antarctica to South America when the oceans were lower. About 4,000 years ago, the oceans were lower, and this would have been dry land. This was one of the major objections that was claimed to be Antarctica was part of South America. This is what we are seeing in the Perry Rice map. They were joined at the time. Bibliotecapelides.net debunks the Antarctic theory, but reveals more interesting information on the Perry Reese map. Below is my paraphrase. In this map, there is a large island which does not exist today. Following the coastline of South America northward, one can easily distinguish the Windward and Leeward Islands, Puerto Rico, then the island of Hispaniola, which share modern Haiti and Dominican Republic. North of this, there is a large island which does not exist today. This is where the Great Bahama Bank is now submerged. It is interesting that this large island is marked by a row of huge polygonal stones like those off Bimini. This map shows the Bahama Banks with Bimini stones on dry land. It indicates the oceans rose after the time of this map. These megalithic stones now rest under 18 feet of water and may be man-made megalithic structures. This source proves what I said is correct, but how could the oceans be lower when there was no water trapped in ice sheets? This is the result of the rise of the lighter continents compared to the heavier ocean basins after the flood, rebalancing like scales. Over hundreds of years, the water sealed inside the earth continued to flow, causing the oceans to gradually rise back up after the initial flood left the land. And by the way, they still have these hot water vents along the mid-Atlantic ridge today, and so those fountains of deep are still releasing water, but at a much slower rate, just like the mountains are still moving slightly. Rebuilding civilization after the flood. After the flood, man started rebuilding civilization, Genesis 4:17. And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bare Enoch. And he builded a city, and called the name of the city after the name of his son Enoch. By the way, this is not the good Enoch. This was the evil Enoch of the evil lineage of Cain. There were two Enochs. The story of Cain before the flood is identical to the story of Nimrod after the flood, recreating Cain's city or world government Atlantis and its advanced technology at the Tower of Babel. The occult people refer to it as Atlantis in order not to acknowledge that the Bible is correct. The Bible tells us Tubal-Cain was a descendant of Cain, the founder of the satanic lineage, in Genesis 4:22. And the Masons, the Illuminati, claim Tubal-Cain as their founder and use it as the secret password recognition of a master Mason. Quote, and Zillah, she also bare Tubal-Cain, an instructor of every artificer in brass and iron. This is long before the Iron Age, too, that evolutionists claim. Tubal-Cain became known as the god Vulcan. By the way, Tubal-Cain, of course, is before the flood. He was known as the god Vulcan, the god of fire and the sun. He was one of the first alchemists. This shows he was a pre-flood Nephilim, and the illuminated Masons and Knights Templars are saying they are the descendants of the Nephilim through the Egyptians. Origin, Sermons on Number 18.4 from religionfacts.com. Origen was born in 185 AD, Alexandria, Egypt, and died 254 AD, Caesarea. And here it tells about Origen, but we'll continue this next time. This is section number 20. We'll be continuing in the next one.